Alright, just took a low. What's good, everybody? It's King here. As you see by the title and the thumbnail, this is going to be me ranking the protagonist of Far Cry from least to greatest. What is being said, aka weakest to greatest, I guess you could say, or worst to best, whatever you want to call it, whatever the title may be saying. But I hope you guys are having a great day. I appreciate you guys for watching these videos. It seems like, they get decent reception. And I appreciate you guys if you watch it from start to finish, regardless of the case, of how long it is, how much yap there is. But as you see, again, by the title and saying it's on the thumbnail, I'm going to be talking about every form of technical protagonist that you can play and see greater emphasis of substance in throughout all the Far Cry games. Now, starting with the bottom, uninteresting slash bad, we have the Far Cry New Dawn protagonist and the Far Cry 2 protagonist. It's simply because of the fact that they don't have any actual personality. They're, absent of any true technical record of character. There's literally no personality. You're devoid of any credited personality. You can't proclaim anything about them. There's no pull into them. There's no snag of, something more of greater grandstand. Far Cry New Dawn is not a good Far Cry quote-unquote game. It's a more like off-brand DLC. That shit is trash, and the protagonists don't do nothing to add more to it. I could care fucking less for it, and at the end of the day, it's just not interesting. Far Cry 2, even with it being, I feel like, another mixed bag, underrated game and having a lot of cool aspects, themes, and, philosophy kind of poured into it, it is not going to sting super bigger of interest with the protagonist being just a whatever type of person. Granted, to the Far Cry 2 protagonist thing, it is interesting with his point of view being from a mercenary point of view, and he's coming after somebody that's doing what he's doing, but for means of actual good and gray means. And his whole credit of any possible point is the fact that he doesn't practice what he preaches and mix hypocritical portrayal and dilemma within the civil war in Africa or whatever the case may be, but he simply doesn't have enough a actual personality or anything that sticks to say anything. And from my memory, this protagonist does not actually speak. It's all mixed bag action, and unlike with the deputy as a comparison, because the protagonist doesn't speak, or like with Takar where you don't even know their language, even though there obviously are subtitles, right? That can give bigger emphasis because Takar's language is made up. So that's not the problem. It's more about what he really strives for and stakes in, and he has no actual make of anything with this. So yeah, that's simply put the reason why he would be an uninteresting slash bad. There's nothing to make of with them. There's no type of character. There's no stitch of anything of bigger purpose. And even with how he does stuff in gameplay, with him having to take care of himself as he has a disease. I don't know if it's syphilis or something. I heard that from the record of he might have a case of sexually transmitted disease, or he might have some type of form of albola. Activity. Is it Ebola or something like that? How do you even say that? Is it Ebola or Albola? I don't know which way you say it. I haven't even heard of that, technical state of disease to the body shit through, weird infection. But whatever possible case of disease that he has, and that counteracting within his job and making some interesting case of, tension or whatever, does not change anything, too much. And yeah, simply put, there isn't really that much I can really say more about them. They're just whatever. They don't have none of personality, to say the least. But next, we have the case of D tier, mediocre slash plain, with AJ, Buck, and Kai Lang, or however you say his name. Is it Kai Lang or Ko Lang? I don't know. But AJ is simple. AJ is devoid of any true personality. My man is absent of any type of case of grasp of what he's doing on a greater deal. At any occasion when he does actually say anything and actually acknowledge what's going on, it's at the last minute, and it's barely of true substance. He doesn't prick anything of uniqueness, creative pool, or anything. The only interesting things about AJ and the cusp of his personality is reigned in the fact that he has great, interesting legacy. He's a part of a bigger plot unfold of this and this and this. He's used as a pawn by more interesting character, more interesting dilemmas. He has kind of interesting antagonistic figures like Noir, Mixed Bag Paul, and obviously Yuma and Pagan Min, and the GOAT himself. But he doesn't do anything with it, and anything that he does, it doesn't really strike of any bigger interest to me. There's also tick of the fact that he has no backbone. He doesn't call out Amida or Sabal on their obvious shit, and he never will actually unravel what they're doing in by the end when you see their opposite endings and see the different perspectives. When you see it, you do not see it from an actual bad or fully realized perspective. You see it from just the false merit and purpose of, what they're striving for. And technically your killing of them at the end is mixed bag, not canon. Like, you're just deliberately just a walking war machine. This nigga don't even got no mental distortion or any type of, trauma. He has no reality going on for him. He's basically walking in a simulator of just guns and violence. None of the violence makes him change. None of it affects him. None of what he does affects his mind or has any possible sting of true purpose, to be fair. And he's doing all this to rest his mother's ashes, which I respect. To take her to Lakshmana, which in truth is his little baby sister, grave, and with her ashes, right? But even with getting to that point with the secret ending or the end, it just kind of feels dry because he doesn't really do anything as a character to really have any big stand in anything. What he does the entire game is for that purpose, but then pulled into all this snuffed into danger and craze madness and whatever fuck shit. This does not add more. He does the same thing in Valley of the Yetis. AJ all around, I just feel like it's not overarchingly good protagonist. Now, he's not super shit. As you know, he does some cool shit. I do think he has some cool drip. Again, his legacy. I think his voice actor, even though I'm not trying to call bad because I don't think he got good enough material to make him try. AJ does not sound like he really, really gives a fuck in his voice. And then there's a mixed crack of, obviously, his accent would be realistically changed to full more American-like. But the fact is that he just kind of sounds like a discount Jason Brody. Not exactly the same, but his, archetype, right? Like, he feels the same archetype in essence without any of the sauce. I think that's a great analogy. AJ is a sandwich with no sauce. As I put him, he's plain, he's mediocre, he has no strongness to his character. It's that simple. Now, next to Buck, with that being said, Buck, right? Buck is a character that, has personality and has cool instinct shit, but he lives in a little case of story. This man, doesn't have anything of true greater purpose or way of actual interest as a personality sense. As a personality, he's cool overall as a character, right? We love Buck, but the thing is with this man, right, doing what he's doing, right, in comparison with that person, right, that guy has a lot more essence to him that is evolved with the Far Cry 3, because that's when Herc first appeared, right? And that's what we're talking about here, what is being said. Now, Herc, slash in his Buck sense of just random goofy activity, is interesting, but doesn't actually have anything of true strong weight in his moving or actually in purpose beyond just simply, okay, fun, whatever, goofy guy. You don't really learn anything of a greater stand of his character until Far Cry 5, right? And Buck all around has always just been a one off, side character that appears here and there regardless if it's his ancestor or this and this random thing. Herc being here in comparison with the Buck comparison that I made or example, right? Where he's just kind of whatever goofy. At least there's a lot more kind of psychological and intrigue touch to him, especially what he represents, his degeneracy or the cow of, his psychological parody to Jason and just being a interesting and intriguing antagonist. This man Herc, though, as a protagonist and what he does is never that big in Namor's sense. He's just kind of one off and whatever, and he just works. But again, I'll give him more credit, than AJ, because at least he's a guy that has a little bit of flavor to his analogy of being a sandwich in comparison. Kai Lang, though, I would say is bare minimum better than them because of the record of Shangri-La being an interesting case of, story, what his purpose is, to find himself through the path of valor. He has an interesting case of, design. He has interesting legacy and effect. And if you want to take the actual, myths and stories of Karat and ties to Hinduism at face value and being hypothetical truth, as magic does somewhat exist in Far Cry, and hypothetical, supernatural, and wild things do exist, depending on how you perceive different storylines and shit. Kai Lang did reinvent the world of Karat back in the day to make it blossom to what it would become. So, arguably, Kai Lang does hold a lot of great stand as a protagonist. It's also just like he, even without, speaking English or the general language of anyone, would be out here still having great strikes, interesting character purpose and stand and things that I don't feel like any of the two here or below would stand, any of the four in comparison. But next we have Cool, aka being B tier like shit. And in this case, you have the Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon protagonists, Far Cry 1, Takar, Danny female version, the Rookie, aka Deputy, and then male Danny. Now I'm going to explain why there's two versions of characters here, and obviously explain it in full, but apparently proceeds to just make this clear. Obviously, P protagonist S, step protagonist A, technically Cool is this B, then it's technically C, but could also be like considered, D comparison, and this mean like D, but pretty much more or less F. They're kind of, again, with slash being basically the same. Just make that clear. These are kind of like more distinctful like differences. But male Danny is here because of the fact that even though Danny as a character is still always going to be cool, from the charisma, the drip, the outfits, how they perceive the world, their type of character being a parody to Castile, with him being stuck in his ways and projecting his pain, his trauma, and his ego onto the world. Danny is taking her pain or his pain and reforming that into a form of bigger drive, fuel, and makeup for the terrible tragedies and travesties that have plagued Yara, and at the same time trying to do something good in the name of somebody else that strived to do this good. She believes in what she's doing. She honors, the things. There's a lot of great character moments and great case of, chemistry of everybody that he or she interacts with and all that. But the reason why male Danny is lower than female Danny is because of the fact I feel like the male voice actor and male Danny in comparison strikes the same matter of weight and interesting stellarness as female Danny does, and I'll explain it on a greater deal. But it also ties with it kind of being, advertised, especially because the actress for Danny, who's going to be the voice actress of the GTA 6 protagonist, has a lot more substance and, flavor to her. You know what I'm saying? She has a lot more style that kind of sinks in, a little bit more intrigue and all around coolness to me. So yeah, then you have the Deputy, right? And the Deputy, okay, the Rookie at first, is here because even without speaking, especially with the theory of hypothetically being mute, brings a lot more personality kick, credit of interestingness, stellar, interactions, parody, comparison qualm to, everybody in Far Cry's, entire family of psychopaths and deranged people having great interactions and representation of, a man doing what he's doing, or, she, because, he or she, but I'm just going to call him he because of a reference point always being, mixed bag, represent like a person that is, masculine, you know what I'm saying, in the case of, the new Dom representation of the Deputy, because I really like this design, regardless if I don't like, this one-off DLC game, you know what I'm saying, but, I'm just saying Deputy is a he, for a clear, obviously, reference point, but he slash she doing what they're doing because it's a job for them, but it also has honor, and that goes for the case of technically any one of the Joseph Seed family, as in a way they have to honor not just their brother, their father, but also whatever credit of pledge to God. But the people, like the case of Faith, who's over here, corrupted, a victim, displaced from, her actual mental psyche, and is doing everything she's doing because she's a victim of her environment, and the deputy showing a little bit of concern and compassion for her, at the same time having begrudged reasonable, rivalry with one of Joseph's brothers, is being said, and then having reasonable dislike for John, and growing bigger, family connection and partnership with everyone there, and then being a literal case of, vessel for Joseph's seed without them knowing, is a very interesting and defined case of, representation of how to make a person who's mute, doesn't talk, and is entirely based upon a player's decisions still have uniqueness and great value and coolness, because the deputy is just a chill motherfucker. And I rock with that by the fact that he does all this while being in an entire hurricane of wildness. All right, he doesn't need AI generated print. He don't need some wild unneeded case of, manners of talking or belligerentness of, personality to evoke interest, as long as they play a cool, decent role in a bigger overarching game. They have cool aspects to them. They make up, in the case of their non-talking personality, with personality of a different type, and they can do things that, in my comparison, that the Far Cry 2 protagonist and the New Dawn protagonist don't do, where they're entirely absent in personality or dispersed of any overarching greater intrigue and interest. And the thing is, the deputy has a credit of at least having some viability and value. There's incentive to care about the overarching events that are happening through the deputy's eyes. And we decently have a little click of, like, I don't know, I feel like mixed bag, like actual lake of like progression and love to the ordeal that happens in Far Cry 5, because it tries to really pull you in through the eyes of the deputy in a realistic way. They make events and situations really tear at your psyche and tear at your moments of pain to the greatest ordeal, and really put you into the eyes of a rookie turning into a lone wolf hero throughout the journey. Tied with the interesting characters and everything that makes the deputy and just Montana work as a Far Cry, map slash place. It's very interesting. And I do like the type of legacy that, the deputy holds in the end for the case of Far Cry 5, New Dawn, or Far Cry New Dawn, whatever you want to call it again. Booty-ad game, bro. I just get more and more freaking so offended even trying to proclaim that that's a fucking game, because it is a disgraceful game, to say the least. But female Danny is here for everything I said before, but the voice acting, the greater representation and connections, tie with, her drip aspects kind of fitting a little bit more uniquely and defined. In the case of her female version, I like that her default wear is basically repping the Viva Libertad colors with the blue, yellow, green a little bit, essence in the vest, her jetpack, or case of, fucking whatever it's called, record of thing, what I'm saying, the flamethrower, in case of, her yellow shirt, and the fact that Danny's just cool, that Danny kind of a bad thing, what I'm saying, Bosky thing, what I'm saying, so, I just fuck with Danny, she's cool, she's dope, all that. But next we have Takar. Takar works so well, like with everything with Kai Lang, but does it more stupendously. First of all, the voice acting is pretty fucking solid with this man. Alright, he's very cool. He's smart. He's tactical. He builds up an entire community and arguable population on some Connor Kenway shit. And he makes some great improvements and great advancements of his people and society. The game works so well within that gravity of going along a journey, trying to build up your family, and pretty much at the same time live up to the legacy that came behind you. Takar came from a small pack of Winja who were lost in a hunt for food, to get a baby mammoth. Got caught lacking by a saber-tooth, the blood-fang saber-tooth, which you can go out your way to go and tame and pretty much seal the fate of this blood-fang saber-tooth to be a brother in arms and discard, the past, right, that the blood-fang saber-tooth came from, and pretty much light a torch for a better path for both of you. A path of bloodshed through the means of family, safety, or whatever possible strife for your people, right? As at the end of the day, it is a cycle of life, for the weak to presumably be eaten and the strong to devour, right? And so the saber-tooth tiger had to do what he had to do. Even if he caused the death of Takar's brother, that shit don't seem to phase Takar to a heedful extent. The only time Takar feels any reasonable, right, big begrudged rage is against Batari and how he takes out Batari and learning and same time gaining basically fire like indulgence pretty much through, the teachings of Batari's second in command, Lashanti, how the fuck you say his name, and, more and more throughout the game becoming stronger, faster, more tactical and adaptive, learning the environment, you taming animals, doing a bunch of different stylistic things. And again, with the fire thing, becoming, more adept in the fire knowledge, and most importantly, when you kill her, holding her by the neck and putting her on fire, you use what she has used to torch, pillage, slaughter your people with, and you literally have fire negation as you are not harmed by fire. You gain a sense of pretty much like invulnerability to fire, and your ass does not feel no harm by that, and you literally hold her by the neck while she screeches to death in pain, what is being said. And Tardy, evil shawty, evil bastard, bro. Simple as that. She deserved that shit. And I love that he showed compassion to Ull even after Ull's people have ran his people's homes, slaughtered many of like his people, multi times, have possibly raped, eaten, and straight up desecrated his people, and have threatened multiple of his people's lives, and have gotten people so fear stroke, basically mentally distorted and downgraded of normal living, just off the back of his people proclaiming to want to reform his people through the eye of killing people who are healthy and live many moons just to gain more territory, and or through eating them to be able to become healthy again. When in truth, regardless of it being religious perspective, with them losing a case of the faith and, normal ordeals, these motherfuckers are crazy. But even with their craziness and depraved ideas and this barbaric moves, bro, like you literally see your people on spikes and other disgusting shit, Takar still shows compassion to Ull's daughter and baby brother, you know what I'm saying, of, his daughter in comparison, right? Takar, at the end of the day, is a very solemn, strong lad. He's cool. He's interesting. He's very proud, passionate, very aerodynamic in the case of, ideal of like a solemn war chief warrior that shows compassion, shows sympathy, shows valor, has great, intrigue, and is very unironically a very funny guy, you know what I'm saying, with his just very, solemn, stoic record of personality, right? And kind of negates any possible bigger trigger of this and this and this thing. He's always a very seasoned individual. I just think he's just a definition of cool. I don't think anybody can deny Takar's multiple laying of this badass busting ordeal. And he's definitely big up as a protagonist from the fact that he's the only protagonist to technically have a happy ending. Like, no big PTSD, no very gray making you feel like you went through an entire adventure and tragedy has, strucken you. No, you went through an adventure of reforming yourself from a nobody caveman to having a legacy like no other, right? I mean, the happy ending after you gaining, all the resources needed for your people, building your population up, getting everybody's hut together, making your hut basically be your sense of throne, and basically being credited as being the most goated individual of Oros, right? Central Europe. Your people dance in celebration to live many moons and centuries. Pretty much being the catalyst for, the legacy of Winja and humanity itself. That is beautiful to me. That is epic, right? So, yeah, I mean, I have a lot to say about Takar, obviously, because, again, he's one of my favorite protagonists of Far Cry. And, it's very underrated, like Far Cry Primal is itself. But, yeah. Next, you have the protagonist of Far Cry 1, the Jackal, and obviously there's just a rating of him as, the protagonist, as obviously has more subs to that, as this man technically has 3 to 4 games, including Far Cry 2, what is being said. But, yeah, this man, I forgot his name, but he obviously was the first protagonist. He reckoned the essence of Jason Brody, but in this case being a form of, badass Jason Bourne, equalizer, efficient, killer mercenary to save the world, defeat the corrupt businessman, to dominate the fields of battle, regardless of being cyborgs, half dinosaurs, mutants. It didn't matter what it was. I mean, my man was just epic. My man was the Rick Flag of the verse. He has a very interesting personality. He get women. He's a Giga Chad. He's just a very solemn dude. But the reason why I put him over to Car a little bit is because he has a lot more length to his personality in essence, right? And, that is not entirely down for me. The Cars over I could think is, again, he has a great boatload of personality, even if he doesn't speak English or anything. It's just that, because he has a better plethora of games and he has a lot more done with his character, there's a lot more crack of connection and intrigue to him, right? But then you have the case of this protagonist of Far Cry 3, Blood Dragons, and it's simply because of the fact that with him, he does the same things that the Far Cry 1, aka the Jackal protagonist, does. It's just with him, he kind of stinks a lot more because he reminds you of Dredge. If y'all don't know who Dredge is, he's a comic book character who's an anti-hero that uses iconically a pistol-like shit and brings out justice. He does that, but on a more epic scale. He's from a futuristic world. It kind of strikes a little bit more bag of, interesting, stellar feel and mannerism and essence to him, right? And it's all around in the grandstand, a all around cool, just spectacular protagonist. He just is a wild dude. I mean, he spirals out into the most crazy shenanigans. It comes out still kicking with a smile on his face. So I can respect him. And in case anybody's questioning why I didn't have the Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon antagonist on my last tier, is technically I did. I just forgot about him because if I don't remember that much of him, I iconically for a long time thought Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon's antagonist was an actual fucking dragon, as there is a major dragon, boss in opposition, and it's just a dragon technic mind control to fight you. But that had more substance as a technical opposition and fear stroking situation, because that dragon is a menace in comparison to that dude. Because the dude, I don't know his name, but it's this Russian dude. He got a cyborg eye. He looks like Kano from Mortal Kombat, dead ass, that one Russian skin for Kano, even though Kano's Australian. I'm not saying don't make sense, but that's funny to think about. He kind of looks like that, but he's dispersed of all possible grasp of personality left and right, because he's just a mustache twirling whatever conviction villain that just wants to play the protagonist and the ordeals of the plot for his own means. Now, I haven't played the game in a minute, so when I replay it, right, because I'm replaying Far Cry Primal right now, because I'm playing obviously the games in chronological order, right, and Far Cry 3 Blood Dragons, even though it's technically a movie, this is a movie in the Far Cry verse, it would take place, obviously last because it's in the fucking future, but yeah, simply put, bro, I don't have nothing to say about the overall plot besides the credit of the protagonist being all around interesting and pretty defined note. But depending on, how I play, the games and going through this tier list, like any other tier list, might change. But I'm pretty confident in my rating all around what is being said. And, I'm glad I'm able, to strongly articulate this shit and, say it how it is. But, yeah, it's, not anything more different, in comparison. It's just he's just a very solid protagonist. Again, with people being in the same tier, you could hypothetically, debatably switch him around. It's just, to me, he kind of cracks a little bit more of the can opener of badass, just in a comparison sense of what they do. But moving on, we have stellar protag. These 3 protagonists with their short stories give a greater evolved explanation for the characters. You get more of a brain opener on Joseph Seed's whole degraded, philosophy of life, what I'm saying, for why he does what he does, his wild antics, his disconfigured, mind, as in the sense of, how the poster represents it, with him being a broken man, a entirely depraved, psychotic, delusional, mentally ill for a man that is blaming and or projecting and basing his entire philosophy of a corrupted idealism of Bible, God, and crack of also illusion by the fact of the dawn of destruction to come from things that he knows of only by mixed bag coincidence because of what happened in Far Cry 5, and that giving more bigger stack of, something of interesting nuanceness, because his whole entire mindset and the way he does things is a blend of a very foul mindset man off the back of religion, but crack of also having some truth to his words and how he proclaims to do things, push things in different order, and forming a community that full to the greatest heart, bleeding heart, believes what he's doing is right, all off the value of the fact that, in this sense, this man Joseph Seed is himself a terrible human being, but a terrible human being sometimes leaves the best. And how he came to this belief is so interesting because, again, his values all kindle from the idealism of God, but it's also cracking of also breaking new levels of proclaim to a higher stand. But everything he does degrades that higher stand and is so fucked and disillusioned every time he does something, because he's just literally a mentally ill man praising something of false merit and can sound so convincing, charismatic, and be truthful about, things to come, but is always doing it in a way so unbearably foul and deliberately evil and psychotic to the greatest means. I mean, he really is a whole disconfigured brain cell motherfucker, right? I mean, my man is literally having a whole poster representing his psyche being cracked, right? My man is definitely a whole fucking crack sharpness to the greatest extent. You know what I'm saying? Because he's a very smart antagonist and or protagonist, and every indication of that is shown from how he went about playing the minds of people with this, how he went about his ordeals, the fact that he killed his own child and then was able to spurn the minds of his brothers in a way to his calling and using their scenarios and their own dark, sides to make this, and then how he corrupted faith and did all this shit. I mean, he's just a master manipulator, and so yeah, he's just steadily written in how he compounds together all that shit. And Pagan Man, I talked about before, is a very defined protagonist, right, in comparison to him, as he represents not just values as a man, right, that is understandably sympathetic, and I can understand, but also gives you a very great case of empathization and sympathy towards the record for his reason. And obviously, for some people, this might seem like a contradiction with me putting Pagan Min over Joseph Seed. I don't think he's a better villain than Joseph Seed. I think he's a better protagonist. That's why we're talking about protagonists. But I'm just saying that was more or less my yap about more or less what Joseph Seed is as a whole fucking character, as a whole. If we're rating them as whole characters, then to me, this would be a different form of, rating, and you could make the entire tier list different considerably. But I do think it would stay more or less the same, right? But this being said, Pagan Min is a better protagonist to me because it brings you more into rationale of his mind, while with Joseph it just kind of explains the dark down course into the depths of hellish demonic praise that this man Joseph C is calling to. With Pagan Min, you understand his mindset. You see what he was going for. You see his reasonings. He explains his reasons for showing all the greater in-depthness of his life, the pain he's went through, his trauma, his downcore to, vengeance, and pretty much representing how he has been able to, the entire time as king, base his logic off the back of perfection to the highest order, to proudly crack down on all the walls of his society to build the greatest environment. His whole call, his whole devotion was to order, but that was slowly being destroyed by the terrorists known as the Golden Path that had reasons to go against what he was doing. But it's how they did it that more and more slowly degraded his entire values as a man to have integrity, strong principles, and a semblance of humanity. And in time of, war with his own people, he got a touch of that back when he met AJ's mother, Shwari. And he had love, and he had Colin, and he grew to be a better man because of her. But when they had their child, and obviously Moham found out, he took his daughter, his baby, his son, like shit, and his life away from him. And that dispersed any essence of light in him. And he was corrupted by fear, sadness, and anger. And that slowly depraved him to the fullest extent. That was the thing that broke the camel's back and made him speed off into new plague of madness and insanity, with him wanting to fully control by any means domination, decimation, pillage, slavery, the black market, filling his country with poison and plague, to basically base it around the back of conquer by any capability, and anybody that strings different, you sever them from it. To sever the leeches, you got to go for the head. And anybody that goes against what he's saying is leeches. They're fakes. They're frauds to the idea of perfection. A utopia is not built off of kindness. It is built off of the man that is willing to make the hard decisions. The most broken people are the greatest leaders, some people would say. And he's a broken man beyond belief. Especially what broke him is that Shwari would take AJ, who, again, was alive at the time. He's older than obviously his child. He was a little boy too. And he saw him as a potential son. He was going to maybe be the reform of him. But Shwari took him. Obviously after, murking the man that took away her child, right? That slowly dispersed all level of goodness in his heart, right? Like that delayed hypothetical light to resurface in him. And he even knew where Shwari was by different accounts. He has the connections. This man Pagan Min is like Hoyt and Vaz, but arguably 2 times bigger. But he could never fathom having them again because he could not live with himself knowing that Korat would not be what he wanted. And the only way to possibly leave a different type of sense of mark for Korat of good was eventually getting its son back here, AJ, and stapling a higher power, you know what I'm saying, as, the true ruler of this place, you know what I'm saying? He basically set all the pieces in place of the story and basically left breadcrumbs as basically walking by possible tale for nothing but, a new recourse of like action for Korat to grow and blossom by the fact that he basically would destroy it in some way and eventually in his mind make it better through doing these things, as there has to be some level of disorder to make actual order. But when AJ came, he wanted to kind of make a new slate and again staple a new sense of higher power into play and did all these great, levels of, wild, disgusting, straight up vile activity with, fucking over his own people and setting up AJ to fail multiple times. But when it all came said and done, he would give AJ what he would probably promise him years ago: a kingdom, money, fame, luxury, love. Things that he felt like he had, but was all taken away from him. The money that he wanted to use for good, taken. Family, taken. His love, taken. He had nothing. He had to make the best out of a country filled with nothing but hate and anger against him by bad people that now were being portrayed as good when he started going downhill as a leader and doing the disgusting fuck shit that now fueled the masses of like of mad odds and belief off the back of, again, the fact that he slowly lost control as a man, which is why his story, aka DLC, is called Control. When you lose control of your core values, you get detangled from the string of reality. And he slowly, more and more, disconfigured his mind to basically be the notion that if I don't do what needs to be done, I can never be happy. And he can never be happy in Karat because there was no level of happiness. Again, the fucking country was fueled by rage and hate against him by the cup of, mad wild this and rotted activity this. And because they were fueled by that, he had the full stamp, with the fullest might of that, which was full onslaught of the most heinous actions, coming with the most weird fantasies and dark, disturbing places and play to break down and pressurize the people into fear and tyranny. As he is, he's a tyrant. But he's a very compelling, nuanced, and lovable tyrant because you feel for him. And that is why Pagan Min is the way that he is. Right? And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now for Vaz, I can say the same thing. He's a victim. Man's been a victim of multiple scarred things. He's the best villain, and he's the second best protagonist, unironically. All his reasons are all kindled by the fact that he has been under the leash of a bunch of different people. He's been under the leash under his sister. He's been under the leash of Hoyt. And in some way, he's been under the leash of Jason as he's been kindling more and more hatred to Jason because he gets to have all the case of little sparkles of life that he has, but he don't use it. And in some way, Vaz envies that. He envies Jason. He feels animosity towards him because he gets to have the luxury of the better lifespan. He gets to be made into a warrior and be kin to like him, but not truly. This outsider, this freaking gringo to the island gets to have all these blessings and grace of the love of his sister. He get to have friends, family, and this and calling this shit, be tatted up and be more powerful than me, hypothetically, and I can't do nothing. And depending on how you do things, this nigga Jason has annihilated Vaz's pirates left and right on a back-to-back sense. And he can never, at all, in any sense of the way, grow anything bigger past that. Because simply put, Jason can't have peace because there is no peace in the matter of, his wife unless he gets vengeance or he basically evens the scoreboard of losses. He lost his brother. He lost his vacation plan. He lost basically his girlfriend by his own choices. And he most importantly is being deformed of his mind. He's dissolving his mind. He's devolving from, pain and anger in some way. And that's salting his mind with nothing but blasphemous devotion to craze of violence. He uses violence as a safety net. Vaz can be comforted by his insanity by the fact that he can ration out and acknowledge his madness. But he's so scarred by it that you see that he's a very fucked individual. He says he's not crazy, and in some way he may be true. But he can never solve his craziness until he left Rook Island. He left his birthright. He left Hoyt. He faked his death, and he found peace. He found peace through Far Cry 6. And now he helps people in things like Longinus to be better. So with that all being said, that right there is the reason why Vaz is the second greatest protagonist. But then the first protagonist in Far Cry to really boom people's minds, the greatest protagonist is Jason Brody himself. Enough said. He is one of the greatest protagonists in video games. He's a protagonist, I think, that can only work through a video game, technically. He's one of my favorite anti-technical heroes, an arguable sense of deconfigurement of, one's mind and slowly turning them into a monster, a beast in human skin. And at the same time has a little sprinkle, a little tainted, feeble chance each time to go off into the deep end and become a degenerate, a manipulator, a controller, a violator, and putrid demon. But in the end, hopefully as a good ending, there's a possibility for him to push on. And in his own words, I can feel the anger burning inside me. But still, deep down inside me, I know that I am better than that. And that is such a gravitasing personality, first of all, to be shown, right? I mean, he's a pretty much bundle of everything. And he's so smooth with it. And I love him, you know what I'm saying? And, that's it for the tier list, you know what I'm saying? I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you disagree, let me know down in the comments why or whatever. Give me your own tier list like shit. And yeah, I love y'all. I'm going to see you guys next one. Peace out, my army. Love y'all.